So, tip number 1, never trust a power pedestal to be properly wired or maintained. In fact, before you back that RV up into the site and get it perfectly positioned where you want it, I would always recommend jumping out of the truck first, taking that EMS surge protector and letting it do its thing. Because you want to make sure that power pedestal is going to be okay first, and go ahead and check your water too. Make sure the water works, because those are 2 things that may have to cause you to leave that site, and you might want to go ahead and check those 2 things real quick before you back in and get all squared away. Now, even if you're at a new campground and you think, hey, the power pedestal is brand new, this looks great, still check it out. In fact, sometimes that's even a bigger problem when the campground is new, because they haven't worked out all their issues and bugs. And it happened to us one time. We got to a fairly new RV site, the power pedestal looked great, we plugged in, hooked everything up, and we had no power, and it turned out that there was a loose breaker. And these are things that you just want to visually inspect. Look for any burning or anything that may have like burned wires. Look for loose breakers or loose circuits. These are just things that you want to visually inspect as the EMS is also running through and doing its process, and give it a one-over, give it a good look, and make sure everything is set to go on that power pedestal before you get it all hooked up to the RV. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Why Wait. I'm Chris, and today we are breaking down 10 important RV electrical tips. Some of these tips are really important to protect your RV and your equipment. Not only that, but believe it or not, even protect your life, because we're going to talk about a term called hot skin as well. Some of you may know what that is and heard of it, and we'll break that down later. It'll be a very dangerous thing. Now, we just talked about the first tip, inspecting your power pedestal, really the first thing you should do before you pull into any site. And number 2, important RV electrical tip, when you hook up to that power pedestal, always make sure that whatever breaker you're hooking up to is switched off before you go and hook up. This includes before you hook up a surge protector, EMS surge protector, or if you're just plugging in with your 50 amp or 30 amp cord. Now, like I said, you always want to make sure that these breakers are switched to off before you go and plug in. A lot of times, believe it or not, you pull up, you flip it up, and they will already be switched on for some reason. They shouldn't be, but make sure they're switched off, because if you actually end up plugging something into them while they're already turned on and something is wrong with them, you can damage your EMS surge protector, you can damage your RV electrical wiring, you can damage your cord. So go ahead and make sure those breakers are switched off first. Okay, next up, make sure you always twist lock down your RV cord. You want to tighten that locking ring down when you plug your 50 amp or 30 amp cord into your RV. Listen, loose electrical connections are always a safety hazard. So you want to make sure you have that plugged all the way in, locked down, and tightened, because you don't want any kind of loose connections in the RV. You also want to make sure you have a nice tight connection at the power pedestal and that everything is pushed all the way in there as well, because if either one of these has a bad loose connection or a loose pin, that is one of those situations that can cause that hot skin on the RV, which we're going to break down again in a little bit. Number 4, important electrical RV tips. Take good care of your RV power cords, your 50 amp and your 30 amp cords. Not only that, but take good care of those dog bones as well. Listen, you want to properly inspect them for wear, tear, any loose, wiring that you may say. Maybe they got a crimp, maybe they're getting corrosion on them. These are all things you want to inspect. Also, store them properly. Don't store them outside in the elements. Keep them stored away properly when not in use. When you're inspecting them, if you see corrosion, or whether or not you even see corrosion, you can clean them yearly. I like to use a LeBeau Shield T9. You can actually spray it right in there and just keep those connections cleaned up so that you always have a good, clean contact when using your power cords. And that brings us to the next tip when talking about power cords. Make sure that you always have a ground pin on your power cord. That would be this little guy right here. Now, it's pretty simple, and most of your power cords should have this. The ground pin is there to protect you in the event of an electrical problem by diverting electrical current to the ground, so it doesn't go to you or the frame of your RV. Using plugs and adapters without a ground pin gets people actually killed every year, and that comes from that hot skin situation, which we're going to dive into again in a few minutes. Okay, so we've pulled into the RV site, we got out, we checked the power pedestal, we plugged our EMS in. We lit it, go ahead and run its program, make sure it checked out, everything's good with that. We got our cord properly maintained. We went ahead and plugged the cord in, made sure the breakers are off first, tightened all the connections down nice and tight. We're good to go, right? Make sure that you are using an EMS. That brings us to the next tip. Don't just use a basic surge protector. Go ahead and make a little bit of a splurge. These things can be expensive, but they're going to be worth it. An EMS, electrical management system, is going to save you lots of money, probably one day, by protecting your RV. It's going to sacrifice itself. Some of them, like the one I have, it would be a one-time use. If it had a major surge, it's going to take the blunt of that surge. It's going to basically damage itself, and you will be out a surge protector. But it's going to protect thousands of dollars of equipment inside the RV, your TVs and your fridges and all things like that. Now, lots of people have said, hey, we've been RVing for years. We've never needed one. We never used one. Well, yeah, I've been wearing my seatbelt for years too, and I've never needed it, but that's not a good way to think. Just because I've never needed my seatbelt doesn't mean I'm going to stop wearing it, because one day it may come in handy and save my life. Well, it's the same thing with an EMS, a surge protector, okay? You may have never needed one, it may have never, saved your RV, but when the day comes, you're going to be happy that you have it. So I'll put some links down below to those. I have the EMS by Progressive Industries. We've had that one for a long time. It's been great. It runs through a 2-minute check when you first plug it into the power pedestal. Make sure that everything is okay. It runs through and makes sure there's no reverse polarity, and make sure there's no open grounds, no high voltage, no low voltage before you even hook up to the site. But I do like what I see from the Hughes Watchdog company. Those look pretty neat. They're Bluetooth. They can send, things right to your phone that you know what's going on. And again, I think it's the only surge protector that will have multiple uses. If it ever protects your RV from an extreme surge, it's not going to just totally sacrifice yourself. I think it can be I'd have to look more into it, but I think there's like a chip or something that can actually be replaced within it so that you can keep reusing that surge protector. Okay, let's jump into number 7 now. And this one may spark a little bit of controversy. And it is never plug into a 20 amp extension cord. Why would you do that? Well, I'm sure you guys have heard of moochdocking. You're visiting friends and family, you pull into their driveway and you want to hook up to their power source. So you start taking your 50 amp and you break it down to 30 amp, and then you break it down again with another dog bone all the way down to a 20 amp extension cord to plug into a socket in their garage. And that's just, it's really not good for your RV. I know a lot of you out there are going to say, oh, we do it all the time. I've run one AC unit off it, this and that. Yes, it can be done, and yes, you may get away with it, but at the same time, it's just really not a good idea. These RVs were not made to run like that. Now, if you're going to mooch dock, I recommend talking to your friends and family and telling them to install a nice 30 amp or 50 amp breaker that you can plug into. So the deal is, these RV electrical systems were designed to run in a perfect balance with an adequate power supply of electricity. So if you try to run power through a 20 amp cord, extension cord, versus a 30 amp or 50 amp, you won't get an adequate flow of electrons to your RV, and you could actually wreck your RV electrical system. You could create a fire hazard, and the worst thing that you could do is you could create hot skin on your RV. So here we go. We've mentioned this a few times. I told you we were going to break this down, and this is one of the most dangerous things that actually kills quite a few RVers a year. You can look it up. It's kind of surprising, but your RV can actually basically have electricity running through the entire system of the RV. Basically, the whole RV, and even if your truck was attached, kind of becomes electrified. And if you touch anything that's basically metal, your spares, the frame, the hitch, screws, anything like that, you're gonna get a shock. And this shock can be anything from a small tingling feeling all the way to blowing you off your feet and or even killing you. And by moochdocking and running on what may be a sketchy electrical system going through that 20 amp and not having the proper balance of power to the RV like it was designed to run, that is one of the situations that could be caused. And this can happen on new RVs as well as an old RV. It's not just an old RV that this can happen to. So if you ever come across this situation where you're touching part of your RV and you feel a slight tingle in your body and you're getting a little bit of electricity running through your body, back away, inspect everything, shut everything down, and definitely want to inspect and figure out that problem before, you know, something more dangerous happens. And again, we'll go over all the reasons here of why you may get hot skin. One of them being hooking up to a 20 amp. You may have a broken ground wire in your electrical connection. You could even have a loose connection. Again, if you don't tighten down on your connections very good, make sure everything's plugged in really good, there's a chance that the ground pin may not be connected very good. That can create the RV hot skin. You may have just a bad extension cord. The extension cord, your 50 amp cord, may have a problem. You may have an improperly wired power pedestal. That's why we check the power pedestals. Make sure they look good. Plug those EMSs in there ahead of time. That electrical management system is going to run through and make sure that everything is okay with that power pedestal, and it's not going to create an issue that may cause a hot skin to your RV. And all of these can lead to a broken ground system, which is going to cause that electrical current going through the RV and just, well, create a bad situation. Avoid overloading your outlets and circuits with high wattage appliances, or too many of them, such as high-end, high wattage space heaters and things like that. We all know that if you have too much of a high wattage appliance, that can cause plugs and wiring to overheat and even cause fires. So you want to be careful with how much wattage you're putting into your outlets. If you're using like one of those adapters where you can plug 6 different things into it, and next thing you know, you got 2 space heaters plugged in and you got this plugged in, and that can create too much heat. It can melt something, it can cause fires. Hopefully your breakers and things will trip before that happens. Also, don't use extension cords inside the RV that are not rated as well if you're going to use a space heater or something like that. And that's going to bring us to the next one, which is locating where your breakers and circuits and fuses are at in the RV. You want to have a good handle on where all of this is located. If you don't have power, if you can't figure something out, you can easily access this, see if something tripped, know where it's at. Not only will you have some fuses down with your breakers, but you're probably going to have some random fuses throughout the RVs. These things are really known for that. We have fuses located behind our panel with our lights that go to our awnings. We have random fuses up in the front compartment that go to some of the landing gear. And when you get into these issues of why my awning won't go out, my slide downs aren't working, my landing gear is not going down, sometimes it's just the fact that you burned out a fuse, and a 50 amp, a 10 amp, a 2 amp fuse, having a little spare fuse kit, and we carry this one right here around with us, comes in handy. It'll get you back on the road real quick, because a lot of times that's all it is that the fuse is blown, and you know, you switch out that 2 amp fuse, next thing you know, your awning lights are working again, or you switch out that 10 amp fuse, you can get the awning back in and may even get you back on the road when you have one of those situations like that. And the last tip is avoid constantly resetting your breaker switches. Listen, that breaker is tripping for a reason. Yeah, it usually trips once. Okay, hey, we had the coffee maker going while the space heater was going and we were running the microwave. Oops, okay, no big deal. Then, you know, let's shut the coffee maker off, finish doing the microwave, and we're good to go. But if you're having an issue where the breaker keeps going off and it's tripping and you keep turning it back on and it keeps tripping, listen, that breaker is tripping for a reason, and it's trying to tell you something. There is a problem, there is an issue, and you need to track that issue down and find out why it's tripping before it becomes a bigger issue. Those breakers are there to protect you, to cut the power off before it usually damages the unit that you're using, and that is either drawing too much power, too many items on one outlet, whatever the case may be. Don't just keep jumping back into that breaker box and just keep switching it back. Oh, that just tripped again. That trips all the time. I don't know why. Make sure you know why. Figure out why it's tripping. Solve the problem before it ends up leading to a larger problem. Guys, I hope these 10 electrical tips helped you out. Stay safe out there. Hopefully these help keep you safe, and get out there and enjoy the full-time RV life. We'll see you guys next time.